topic of my presentation is on the 18th Amendment, and in this context I talked with a number of people who were involved in the work on the 18th Amendment to work out what was the reason, what was the motivation behind it. In the earlier session, Mr. Asad Umar mentioned that Pakistan is hung over regionalism and does not worry about citizen-centric governance. That literally comes out when one talks about the framers of this landmark constitutional amendment that was passed with the consensus only with one abstention. So the cited reasons were mostly the fact of succession, the federalism under which since 1956, over time federal government encroached upon the powers of the provinces, and provinces in turn encroached on the powers of the local government. And the disenchantment by major two political parties with the local revolution of 2000, 2001, and a desire to check the military adventurism, which has set Pakistan back for many decades during the previous years. Now, the question that Dr. Aisha Boss did me a great favor by really providing an excellent presentation on introducing the 18th Amendment as well as drawing out its fiscal implications. So that I can skip those slides in my presentation, but I would like to mention a couple of things which Dr. Aisha did not mention in our presentation. Maybe it is in the paper. One is that with these as federal government was stripped of its powers and powers were shifted to the provinces, and some powers got shifted to the federation level. The Pakistan is unique among federal countries, is the only federal country with no federal Ministry of Health. And Pakistan is also unique with Canada as the only two federal countries with no federal Ministry of Education post 18th Amendment. This is worth mentioning. And so I'm going to talk more in terms of the implications and maybe repeat some of the points made by Dr. Aisha Boss. First, I think since the focus was on empowering the provinces, indeed provinces have been empowered and decision making truly belongs to the provinces now, and it has very large revenue and expenditure implications. Like, if you look at Pakistan in the 2010, 94% of revenues were raised by the federal government. Provincial and local governments together raised only 6%. And if you go back a little back, much back in the history, say 1955, federal government only raised 75% of the revenues. 25% of the revenues were raised by provincial and local governments level. Now fast forward to the completion of the 18th Amendment in 2014. In 2014, if the provinces make no additional effort to exploit the services tax, still they are going to account for 15%, provincial local governments will account for 15% of revenue collection, and federal government will account for 85% of revenue collection, whereas the expenditure side, federal government will account for only 45% of the expenditures, and the provincial local will account for 55%, and in fact provinces mainly nearly 50% and local government less than 5%. So those are the fiscal implications and this 18th Amendment, there has been a large redundant employment created at the central level, federal level. There are 65,000 redundancies, only 15,000 were absorbed by the provincial governments. And in fact, when province was asked to absorb the employees of the National Council for Human Development, the province of Punjab said, they are all ghost employees. Why we should hire ghost employees? And the 18th Amendment also has rendered Planning Commission and the Higher Education Commission with unclear mandate as to their responsibilities. Dr. Aisha was mentioned that maybe the Planning Commission should have a coordinating task. But if one looks at other federal countries, especially in mature federations, none of the mature federations have planning functions at the federal level. So that is a second option to get rid of Planning Commission. If you cost saving is an option, if you want a leaner and more efficient government. In terms of the implications, fiscal implications, there is also the issue is in terms of the you have separated the VAT on goods and VAT from the services, and now VAT on services has increased the potential for raising revenues at the provincial level, but at the same time also it is going to make the compliance cost for business extremely high, especially for certain services which runs across different provinces. And if Aisha's presentation is any guide and past history is any guide, provinces really do not have any incentives to raise additional taxes. And NFC awards basically encourages them to not raise any taxes. NFC award is more like manna from heaven with no accountability. And having an NFC award and having an empowered provinces also mean you cannot have a program where you basically have autonomy with accountability, where finance provides incentives for accountable governance. If you want to set finances to provide incentives for accountable governance, you need to have finances provided to establish certain minimum standards of services, and then the expectations that those minimum services of standards will be maintained, and that kind of arrangement is simply not possible under the current system. Now, before I get into further details, and also the borrowing avenues have been opened for the provinces, but that is a positive thing. But what is not positive is most of the provinces own their own commercial banks. This is really a recipe for disaster. This gives you a deja vu of Brazil in the 90s with inflation 1,000%, and where the state of São Paulo became bankrupt, but all the states were borrowing from their own banks, and they were able to own those banks. Now, before I get further into these more skepticism of the 18th Amendment, let me first celebrate some positive potentials. Positive potential is, if only the framers thought that they will check the military adventurism, then that will be a very major step forward. But it's not clear that this is going to be any consideration in a future military decision, because they can always centralize powers, back to the center. And there is opportunity for greater harmony in federal-provincial relations, and also you have restored the original intent of the 1973 Constitution, And there is also potential for greater accountability for services because the decision making, both the because the provinces have the financing and also the decision making powers, so buck stops there now. And there is some potential for greater citizen participation. This is I'm going to, however, deal with later because this is an issue that I think probably will not happen. The other issues which are relevant in other countries, but possibly those potential cannot be realized in Pakistan's case, is the empowering provinces mean the decision making have moved closer to the people. If the democratic process and the political finances have these problems as of now, and the dominance of military, feudal, and other elites in the system, then possibly the provinces cannot possibly be moving the decision making to the provinces cannot possibly lead to a greater participation in decision making. And also provinces, there is the potential for improved internal common market. Again, there are less potential here because provincial boundaries are not consistent with economic regions. And there are only a few provinces, 4 provinces in Pakistan. So they have diverse population. So as a result, they cannot really overcome the ethnic and linguistic and other divides that pervades the nations. So those opportunities cannot be realized, and most federal countries with less than 8 federation units are seen to be unstable systems. And no question is whether you increase the number of provinces that Pakistan is thinking, or you completely get rid of them. And I am going to argue, make a case that it's better to get rid of them rather than to increase them. So let me go back, let me do the pitfalls. Now, one is that this was a landmark kind of occasion where is national consensus for built is moving forward with a national legislation. But that opportunity this was an opportunity to reform multi-order governance. So you need to have a very clear vision at that point in 2010, what should be the responsibilities of the federal government, provincial government, and the local governments in a mature system. But as the 2000 revolution paid no attention to federal-provincial relations, here they paid no relation to the provincial-local relations. And even on the federal function, there was a serious neglect of the federal functions. Federal government has a very important responsibility in creating a common economic union. And common economic, political, and social union. And there are certain functions which simply cannot be performed by the lower level government, say the protection of minority, say the dealing with natural disasters, and ensuring there are no barriers to trade and factor mobility within the nation, etc. But these functions are no longer with the federal government. And federal government do not have the spending power. Federal government was stripped also of the spending power because once they give the money through the NFC, they have no money left. All they have left is to stand on defense, debt charges, and something on police. And law and order is another issue, especially when with the current threats to security, etc. issue. You have devolved the police to the provinces, and so again, it represents a difficulty for a federal union. The natural resource ownership again is vested in the provinces, and also creates a potential for Dutch disease and interprovincial conflicts. And with separation of goods and services tax, and you have also, and giving the agriculture income tax to the provinces, you have also increased, created roadblock and eliminated future potential for reforming the tax system, especially VAT system and the income tax system. Those opportunities are almost completely blocked now. The finance also does not follow functions under the revised arrangements. So basically what I'm arguing is you have created a Leviathan model of governance with the provinces, and also you have basically missed the opportunity to right-size the federal government, and also increased in the process risk to macro stability. And you know, the food and drug regulatory regime for food and drug are now the provincial responsibilities. So imagine the regulatory jungle that can be created with this kind of provincial powers. And barriers to factor mobility. Provinces are going to they have incentives to follow baggage like neighbor policies, and they will, previously they had this residence requirement. Now it's constitutionalized that you could discriminate against non-residents, and the residence requirement in the Constitution 18th Amendment says that provinces can have a 3-year residence requirement for non-residents to be eligible for job in a province. So, for services in a province. That is a very major step backwards, because Pakistan's main strength was, I look at regional disparities in Pakistan and other Asian nations. Pakistan had one of the lowest regional disparities. Main reason was Pakistan had much greater mobility of factors and goods and services than other nations in Asia. And that I think we have created a roadblock to that kind of a economic union. So basically what we have created in the process is a model, as Asad Umar was saying, we need a government that works for the people. But here we have created a model where basically the governments are going to work for the governments, by the government and for the government. So I am running out of time, so let me quickly go through the experience elsewhere. If you look at the world experience, provincial empowerment is always associated with weaker local governments. So we cannot go far as Dr. Ishrat Sen and Dr. Aisha Ghaus are saying, well, we have taken the first step, the next step would be local devolution. No, there are incentives, political incentives, that will not let it happen. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened in India. India has 300,000 local government with 3 million elected officials, and it spends 5% of the total consolidated budget on local governance. So, and most of that budget goes for the wages and salaries and allowances, and once that is done, there is very little left for local governments to deliver services. On the other hand, more forward-looking countries, a better model of governance is a compound republic of local governments, where local governments become the primary agent. So you recognize citizens are the masters, and the governments of various orders are there to serve the interest of the citizen. That requires that the local government should be the primary government, providing oversight on higher level governments. So look at China. Provinces account only 9% of national expenditure. Look at Indonesia, same is the case. And compared to Pakistan, it's all, Majority of the expenditures are at provincial level. And look at the Scandinavian, Southern Europe is in a mess, but Northern Europe is a great success story. And lo and behold, what is common about Northern Europe? There are no intermediate orders of government in Northern Europe. They eliminated, most recently, it was Denmark who eliminated the intermediate order of government to basically gain international competitiveness. So, we also did some work on how close is your government to its people. This is a worldwide study. We rank about 182 countries and dimensions of political, administrative, fiscal decentralization, and adjust for heterogeneity of population and area. And where again you find Pakistan and India ranked very low on the government being close to people. And this is after the revolution. So let me basically conclude. Basically, the paradigm here is more that the government is provinces as employment creation agencies rather than service providers. And so province building in general, in my view, would be incompatible with the nation building. And this is, I don't have the time to go through but the paper provides international experiences in this regard that how the province building basically leads to a lack of nation building and retarding the national interest. So in terms of the way forward, the way forward is we need to rethink the role of the provinces and the role of the federal government and local government, and a vision that is more consistent with the information age and more consistent with having a leaner and more efficient. And so what I call fair governance means fair, accountable, incorruptible and responsive governance. You need to have basically the government, either no provinces at all, no intermediate order of government at all, or basically a very lean intermediate order of government having simply interlocal functions. So all responsibility should belong at this local level, and the securing a national economic and social and political union should be the responsibility of the federal government, and should have the financial means, namely spending power, to ensure that. And so local government basically should have the autonomy in terms of financing but deliver all the services to the people. And this is very much the model in Scandinavian country, and this is very much the model in China. This is very close to the model in Indonesia, and those are the success stories. I hope we can learn from experiences elsewhere and keep the public sector leaner and more efficient and more accountable. Thank you very much.